Miranda.
Hi, I'm Elena.
I'm Latan. And I'm Caitlin.
In class, we have covered topics relating to the social construction of gender, as well as the LGBTQ community. However, our goal is to further explore and educate ourselves, as well as you, about the transgender community.
In this video presentation, we will be discussing trans identity, visibility, media representation, activism, and support systems.
At this point, I hope you know that the definitions for sex and gender are different, so we're going to start off with a general definition of transgender. According to the National Center for Transgender Equality, transgender is an umbrella term for people whose gender identity, expression, or behavior is different from those typically associated with their assigned sex at birth.
The trans community is statistically the most marginalized group in the LGBTQ community, due largely in part to lack of visibility and support, along with stigmatization, discrimination, and transphobia.
At the most basic level, people aren't aware of and don't understand the trans experience because of the gender binary. Many people aren't aware that there is a difference between sex and gender. If people don't understand how it's possible to be transgender, they won't be able to understand, appreciate, or respect trans people, their experiences, and their hardships.
In a study conducted in 2008, only 8% of Americans reported knowing a transgender person. This means that for most people, information about the trans community comes from the media. The problem is, transgender people are obscenely underrepresented in pop culture.
When they are represented, trans characters are often not played by people who identify as transgender. In fact, the first trans woman to play a trans woman in any television show is Laverne Cox on Orange is the New Black, which aired in 2013.
Discrimination against members of the trans community is shockingly common and statistically more violent than discrimination against any other group of people in the United States.
In 2001, 90% of transgender youth reported feeling unsafe in school due to their gender expression.
49% of trans people reported physical abuse in 2007.
50% of trans people have been raped or assaulted by a romantic partner.
At least 41% of transgender people in the U.S. have attempted suicide, compared to 2.9% of the general population.
We find that members of the trans community suffer more when their gender identity intersects with race and class.
For example, approximately 20% of transgender individuals are homeless as compared to just 1% of the general population.
African American trans people contract HIV at a rate of 24.9%. 91% of those are trans women. This is due in part to the fact that African American trans women are often forced into sex work simply because they cannot find any other work. In one survey, it was found that 26% of transgender people are fired because of their gender identity or expression.
Trans women of color have a 1 in 8 chance of being murdered.
Even within the LGBTQ community, trans people are marginalized.
Many non-trans people in the queer community show a lack of understanding of the gender binary and are as ignorant about transgender issues as those in the general population.
Widely known campus organizations such as the Human Rights Campaign have historically pushed trans issues and rights to the side in order to focus on gay marriage.
Transphobia within the LGBTQ community is a big problem because transgender people are supposed to feel safe and accepted within their own community, and they're often not.
This violence and oppression is a result of the principle of consistency and gender policing.
In class, we learned that the principle of consistency assumes that there is one normative relationship between sex, gender identity, gender expression, and sexuality. Anyone who doesn't fall within this binary is seen as non-normative and even subhuman. People whose gender doesn't match their sex are seen as the worst offenders, which is exemplified by extreme gender policing.
Transgender people literally are murdered because they don't conform.
There are steps we can take to end this discrimination and violence on an individual and activist scale.
In order to offset the lack of visibility that affects the transgender community, it's important for everyone to be informed about the general terminology and basic information related to the various identities and lifestyles of those within the trans community. We're calling this next section Transgender 101, where we will be providing definitions, explanations, and courtesies relating to the transgender identity.
Transgender is a broad term and is good for non-transgender people to use. Trans is shorthand for transgender. The asterisk, sometimes seen at the end of this abbreviation, reminds us that it can be an umbrella term.
MTF is an abbreviation for the term male to female, a person whose assigned sex is male who may or may not be transitioning or transitioned to female. A trans woman is a transgender person who currently identifies as a woman. A person who identifies as a woman is a woman. FTM is an abbreviation for the term female to male, a person whose assigned sex is female who may or may not be transitioning or transitioned to male. A trans man is a transgender person who currently identifies as a man. A person who identifies as a man is a man.
A transsexual person is someone whose gender identity is different from their assigned sex at birth.
A transsexual person often alters or wishes to alter their bodies through hormone replacement therapy and/or surgery.
Hormone replacement therapy involves changing the balance of hormones in a person's body via patch, pill, or injection in order to develop the secondary sex characteristics of the desired gender.
A transsexual person might also undergo top surgery, bottom surgery, or both. Top surgery for an FTM individual often includes a double mastectomy. MTF individuals often undergo breast augmentation.
Bottom surgery is the process of altering genitals. For trans men, this may include a metoidioplasty, phalloplasty, or scrotoplasty, while trans women often undergo a vaginoplasty and orchiectomy.
There is not one sex reassignment surgery because there are multiple surgeries that one can undergo, and the process of sex reassignment often involves multiple procedures over extended periods of time.
The term sex change surgery is seen as derogatory by many, so don't use it.
Genderqueer is a term used by individuals who don't identify as entirely female or entirely male. Other similar terms include gender fluid and gender nonconforming. Agender is a term used by individuals who may not have a felt sense of gender identity or are internally ungendered.
Cross-dressing is the act of dressing in clothing that is typically associated with the gender with which you do not identify. People who cross-dress often have no intent to live as the other gender.
The term transvestite, a synonym for cross-dresser, is seen as derogatory by many, so don't use it.
Cisgender is a term used to refer to people whose gender identity conforms to traditional expectations of gender and sex. A person born male who identifies as a man and a person born female who identifies as a woman are cisgender individuals.
Let's talk about pronouns!
Preferred pronouns are what the term itself suggests. They're the pronouns by which an individual feels most comfortable being addressed.
Female pronouns are she, her, and hers. Male pronouns are he, him, and his. They, them, and theirs are singular gender-neutral pronouns.
The use of they, them, and theirs as singular gender pronouns is grammatically correct. Correcting someone's use of these terms is not nice, so don't do it.
Other common gender-neutral pronouns include ze, zir, and zirs, and ze, here, and heres.
Fun fact, everyone has preferred pronouns, including cisgender people. The difference is that most cisgender people have the privilege of having other people correctly assume their preferred pronouns most of the time.
Think about it. If a cisgender woman were referred to with male pronouns, she would be offended. Transgender individuals, who are often misgendered, have to deal with this on a daily basis.
If you're not sure what someone's preferred pronouns are, ask them. Hey Caitlin, what are your preferred pronouns?
Thanks for asking, Latan. I prefer she, her, and hers. Also, if you're speaking about a person while they're not there, and you're not sure what their preferred pronouns are, you should use they, them, and theirs.
Calling a person an it is never okay. The term is a pronoun used for objects and is dehumanizing, so don't use it.
As we continue to educate ourselves, it is our duty to share what we've learned about transgender rights and issues with the people around us.
Speak up. Don't be afraid to call someone out if they refer to someone as an it.
Act against transphobia.
While individual action is important, it can only help on an individual scale.
There are many activist organizations that work towards trans equality, such as the National Center for Transgender Equality, Trans Student Equality Resources, and various state coalitions for trans equality.
Across the country, there are support groups for trans people. Here in Ann Arbor, Integrative Empowerment has multiple gender support groups for gender nonconforming people. There are other groups that focus on specific needs of transgender people. For example, Transactive has a program called In a Bind, in which they provide binders to trans men who need them.
Here at the University of Michigan, we have a health program called the Comprehensive Gender Services Program, which provides healthcare services for individuals who are gender variant and in need of primary and gender-related care.
So continue to educate yourself and others, and get involved in collective efforts to end transphobia and help create a safer and more accepting environment for all transgender people.